All right, hello everyone and welcome to the first Performance Nutrition 101 webinar. We're going to do these once a month, the first Monday of every month. We're going to offer a topic, whether that be on healthy eating, weight gain, muscle gain, cooking, meal prep, seed oils, avocado oil, all the different things. So we're going to be talking about a variety of topics every month for as long as people desire it. So my name is Wendy Earlback. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I am so excited to speak with you this evening on performance nutrition. We're going to go through a variety of topics like creatine, protein powders, how to build a healthy plate, and how to take our performance to the next level with nutrient timing. And what I'm going to go ahead and do here is share my screen so that you can see the PowerPoint of all the really great resources that we're going to talk through. And if you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and just unmute and then you can ask it. Super informal. When you ask more questions, we all learn together. So I'm going to try and keep an eye on it too. We have some guests that are going to be coming in and I'll just keep an eye on that, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and get started here. So just a quick brief background about me. I am so grateful. Like I said, I've been all over the place and had really great experiences and opportunities to work for the Dairy Council in Michigan as a performance dietitian. I've been at the University of Florida. I've also worked in corporate wellness. I've been a sports nutrition intern at UW-Stet where I did my master's and undergrad. Very, very grateful for those opportunities because they've really helped me maximize my expertise in building the content that I do that we're going to go through today and working one-on-one with a lot of athletes and just really grateful. So I'd like to give a shout out. So first and foremost, there is a big difference between eating and fueling. What does that really mean? Eating, right, is for promoting growth, development, maturation for youth athletes and equivalent to adults too. We have to still eat, our calcium, vitamin D to support our bone health and fighting off disease. And the difference with sports nutrition really is, right, that we're using some specific foods. There's some nutrient timing, pre, post to really help optimize our physical performance, decreasing risk of injury, recognizing again that athletes have specific needs beyond general health and wellness. So it's more than just fighting off our disease. It's fighting off risk of injury when athletes train, especially youth athletes. We're not only supporting both growth development, but also athletic performance. So additional calories, additional needs are required. This is on the right here, one of my athletes in Michigan. He's amazing. He's playing baseball now. He also played hockey when we met. You can see he's building a plate there. And really the importance of, working with kids is that they don't know the connection between performance nutrition and health, right? Or performance nutrition and their bodies and understanding what happens if they don't eat for health, but then also fuel for athletic performance. So looking at it from a bone mineral density standpoint, lean mass, increased speed, increased stamina, recovery, everything is affected. Our onset fatigue by the foods we're eating, the rest that we're getting, how hard we're training, how long we're training, how intense we're training, all of those things come into play. So I also like to point out too that advocating for, again, all of the different components of, supporting our kids. It's not just their athletics, but it's their academics, their recovery, their sleep, their mental health. And that's really something I've focused on with my athletes is checking in with them. Oftentimes there's a reason why they're not eating certain meals or they're missing out on certain fluids because they may be feeling down, they may be training at a high level, it's suppressing their appetite. So just checking in with kids. So I just like to quickly touch on this with my coaches and anyone I work with, how important that is, that we're only as strong as our weakest link. So typically for most of us, it's going to be that nutrition part. Kids work really hard, but oftentimes they're missing their fluids, they're missing breakfast. So just kind of highlighting those critical key parts of the chain. So this is interesting, because a lot of kids know they need calories, but oftentimes adults, right, we don't know how many calories that the kid needs, the child, the athlete, depending upon where they're at. And the research is pretty inconclusive on a definitive number of calories. So this is just, just a reference chart, the Institute of Medicine, the USDA. I've written blogs about this. They're very loose guidelines. So obviously we can do our bare minimum caloric needs. And I would argue that for physical activity, we're pushing 24 to 3,000 calories, even for females. A lot of my cross-country runners in the 19 to 13 category, they're training so long that they need closer to 3,000 calories. So this is just for perspective. And this doesn't really give us a lot because, oops, someone's coming in, perfect. This doesn't really give us the best recommendations because nutrition, as you know, is very individualized. So just for parents, for coaches, I just share this as like a good starting place. So if you have any of your athletes kind of keeping a journal just to know where they're at, because we don't know what we don't know. So baseline data is really important from a caloric standpoint of, all right, if we have them do some logging, we can say, hey, you're getting about 1,800 calories, which you're active, you're training, you're an adolescent athlete, you need closer to 2,500 or greater. So again, this is just a chart because the guidelines are pretty loose. What I do from a practitioner standpoint is I actually calculate out specific needs based on height, weight, how long they're training. I use the Mifflin St. George, which as a registered dietitian, that is one of my calculators to use. So very individualized when you schedule like coaching, consult, any of those things. All right, so let's kind of get into some of the macros real quick. Proteins, fats, carbohydrates. I know everybody knows what protein is. If you follow me, I've talked about it a lot. So I'm going to kind of skip through this because I think there's more important things to talk about, like nutrient timing. So obviously protein is important. We know that the protein needs are higher when you're more active, when you're trying to build lean mass, trying to support recovery. The guidelines for, again, youth athletes are not very clear, I would argue, because different governing bodies of literature have different recommendations. So the ISSN, which if you follow me, you've seen some of the infographics I've created, I recommend about 1.6 to 1.8 or greater for some of my adolescent athletes. Again, it's very individualized, but if you're a coach, you're a parent, a good place to start is definitely between that 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So that's again going to help them support their growth, development, maturation, more muscle, protects our bone mineral density, and they're growing it right now too. And especially if you have wrestling athletes, I mean, there's just so many individualized things, but that's just basics on protein. And here are some options. I know people are always asking, like, what are some good high quality protein sources? So lean protein is really important, not only from a satiety standpoint, but also, again, optimizing body composition, supporting recovery, especially if you have athletes. Some of my athletes train 20 hours a week. So we're trying to think of portable protein options, right, that are safe for the backpack. And the more that more high quality, the better, as in the higher amount of leucine, which is found in our eggs, the beef, the chicken, and of course, the fish. So I know most athletes, when, they're going to school with all the COVID stuff going on and just travel, it becomes very difficult. So if we can pack things in a cooler, or as I say, backpack stable, the chicken packets, the tuna packets, doing hard-boiled eggs, getting a little mini cooler that they can take with them to school. That's been super helpful. They even have, little small glass containers or plastic containers that you can put your hard-boiled eggs in that are actually insulated. So that's really great. But a simple recommendation without calculating out any macronutrients is a good place for most athletes. Again, is going to be that 25 to 30 grams of protein at meals and 10 to 15 grams at snacks. And I always have an argument of, well, why can't I just do a protein bar? You can do a protein bar, and that's on the list, but we do want to prioritize those high quality protein sources because protein bars do not contain the same amount of leucine like eggs, the high biological value of protein that you would get from our whole foods. So that's why supplements cannot replace whole foods. Supplements are meant to supplement the gaps, and we will talk about that. And of course, carbohydrates, just have to highlight it. One of the most demonized macronutrients is carbs. Unfortunately, even those that work with athletes sometimes aren't providing enough recommendations to eat those. So I always want to make sure it's very clear. I do work with a lot of different folks. Some are fat loss, some are older adults that are sedentary. They don't need as many carbohydrates as an adolescent athlete, which is our topic today, right? High school, collegiate athletes need, and even adult athletes, they do need more carbohydrates. And I will say it always depends. So when we have a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar, you can ask more about, if you're looking for your specific training or if you want to, compare that to your adolescent. So most adults, if they're running 5Ks, they really don't need to be doing any additional carbohydrates beyond, some chocolate milk post training, which is going to give you about 30 grams of carbs. We really don't burn that many calories when we're running a 5K, but kids, adolescent athletes, they tear through those carbohydrates so quickly, glycogen can be debilitated very fast. So they can need anywhere from 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrates per day. And again, that really just depends on the sport, but it's really important to understand that carbohydrates are the most efficient fuel substrate for our muscle and brain, right? They promote our ability to have greater power output, energy, they decrease rate of exhaustion, they help reduce, any risk of injury. When we have enough glycogen, enough carbohydrates as our fuel substrate, we are quicker, more efficient, and our brain works faster too. So if you think about like a hockey player, somebody who's trying to focus on puck handling skills, if they're following a low carbohydrate diet, that's going to decrease their ability to be as effective on the ice. So that's always something I like to relate to people, is that carbs are essential. We need them. All right, breakfast is a non-negotiable, and I talk about this a lot, but kids really struggle to get in breakfast. So even if it's just a piece of toast with some peanut butter, that's better than nothing. Nutrients missed at breakfast are often not made up during the day. And this is in a study, I've cited this so many times because a lot of people think that, it's just made up that we need breakfast, but we do. And I would argue it's not the most important meal of the day. I believe all meals matter because the science, right? A consistent, balanced meal throughout the day is going to be the best way for us to balance out our blood sugar levels, which control our focus, our concentration. So all meals matter. It's just that breakfast, if it's skipped, we reduce our ability to get in sufficient calcium, B vitamins, iron, and vitamin D, which are all very, very important for athletes, right? So it's important. And I just want to share yogurt parfait. That is one of the easiest, most convenient ways to get in breakfast. You can put it in a mason jar, you can put it in a bowl, you can give it to the child, the athlete on their way out. I work with a lot of young kids. So when I say child, sometimes I'm referring to my 7-year-olds that I work with, but they love yogurt parfait. So do adults. I mean, get them into the routine of finding a breakfast that works well. And we have even the data here to support, with some cyclists. I want to refer back to the science always that when we have, an increased rate of exertion, that's likely due to underfueling or, additional training. But this study, just looking at it from a full picture effect, we can see that the performance time was actually improved by having breakfast. There's a better opportunity to have more energy when we consume breakfast. And here are some options. And I've authored a few blogs about this, so you can go check them out. But quick, easy options. You can even do an English muffin, the turkey egg sausage, any of those grab and go options are perfectly fine for kids, right? Sometimes the sodium is a bit higher. That's one thing to be mindful of, but kids also need electrolytes. So that, 300 milligrams of sodium is really not that much in something like that, because again, they're going to expire that. Right now, as we're sitting here, we are expelling electrolytes. We are expelling sodium, not as much as if we were running in extreme conditions, but we are. So just to note, we don't demonize those items. They can be a great choice. The Power Cup muffins, the Kodiak cakes, those are fantastic. You pair that with hard-boiled egg, a string cheese, an apple and peanut butter, you're out the door. Doing that mason jar parfait, also a good option. These are all super quick and easy. Greek yogurt with berries, as you can tell, I promote a lot of those because again, you're getting protein, you're getting calcium, you're getting vitamin D, you're getting fiber, you're getting super satiated from a very simple meal that requires zero cooking. And of course, I have that chocolate milk. So a part of supporting hydration is you can encourage athletes to have milk at meals and water in between. And a lot of kids are deficient in, calcium, vitamin D, especially teen girls, 14-year-olds. They are extremely likely to underconsume those key nutrients for building bone. So that's why chocolate milk or unflavored milk can be a really great choice. And just a couple more options. So if anyone has questions about breakfast, we can talk more about that. Here's just another. So this is the American College of Sports Medicine. So these are their recommendations. As you know, I do recommend on the higher end for protein. So if you're looking to calculate out specific needs for your athletes, what I would recommend is beginning with protein and then carbohydrate and then fat. You can always titrate your fat, and carbohydrate, but fundamentally we do want to make sure that protein needs are met. And I do grams per kilogram. So as you can see here, 3 to 5 hours per week, or excuse me, 3 to 5 grams per kilogram, and it increases with greater training load and volume. And that gets really specific. So that's the benefit of working with a dietitian. I can calculate that out for you, but most athletes right now, teens, they would benefit from that 3 to 5 or 5 to 7, 5 to 9. I mean, if we're looking at 20 hours or more of training, it really just depends. I mean, what are the goals? Are they in season? Are they out of season? It's a lot of food to consume when you get closer to that, 5 to 9 or greater, but more intensity requires more carbohydrates. So 680 grams is a lot. But like I said, some of the hockey players, soccer players, ice skaters, they need more carbs because they're doing their conditioning, they're doing their speed work, they're also lifting, and then they're doing cardio, and then they're also just doing their basic skills, plus their growth, development, maturation in there. You have really high needs. So let's get into the performance plate here. And these are, again, just the basics. I know you've seen this, probably the USDA's My Plate. I have built a aesthetically pleasing performance plate that I show my athletes and I coach on that gives them the picture, because a lot of times they have no concept of what they're supposed to be eating. They just think about protein and they forget about carbs. They forget about healthy fats, which are also super important for regulating hormones, decreasing inflammation. We need to have a sufficient amount of fat in our diet. And that really just depends. 20 to 25% fat is a good place. Like if we're looking at total calories, obviously carbohydrates is 50 to 65, but those percentages a lot of times are really difficult for people to understand. So that's why I work off of grams per kilogram, and I will share again these slides with you so you'll have access to them if you're frantically trying to remember all of this. But again, going back to simply, we want to get kids consuming this. So basic fundamentals, 101, adults 2, we want to have fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean protein. The portion on the plate will determine, your activity will determine the portion on the plate. So if you are more active, if you're trying to gain weight, gain mass, we increase the portion of whole grain on the plate. As you can see, there's that weight management line on there, but we increase or decrease, again, the carbohydrates depending upon the goals. But fundamentally, you've got to have these key components for your student athletes on this plate: the protein, the whole grain, the fruit, the vegetable, a serving of healthy fat, your, of course, beverage. And if we ate like this, three meals per day, again, this is a weight management plate, but 3 meals per day, and then with those snacks of protein and produce in between, that would be a super place for most athletes to start. But oftentimes they skip lunch, they maybe have a tiny breakfast, and then they eat a bunch at dinner. So it's just not optimal for muscle protein synthesis. So here's a plate, and you've likely seen this. I created this in-house, fueling a 2 a day. So 2 a day or weight gain, half the plate is whole grain. So remember how I said that we increase the portion on the plate if we're supporting more activity or weight gain, that changes the whole grain. So this is really simple, and a lot of times it's overlooked. It's typically undervalued, in my opinion, because people, again, make everything so complicated. But if we go back to the basics, if you're increasing an entire portion of whole grain on your plate at each meal and just ate this way, you would be getting in an additional 150 grams of carbohydrates, which can oftentimes help an athlete gain that weight that they're struggling to gain because they're reliant upon supplements and they're skipping meals. They're not doing the fundamentals. And I know this seems super elementary, but once I get my athletes doing these things, when they come to me, with all their things going on, and I share this plate, they're shocked. They're like, shouldn't it be a supplement? Or no, we've got to get you consistently eating the right foods. And we make so many decisions each day. On average, we make about 35,000 decisions per day. What to eat should not be one of them. So it's really important. I'm going to skip through a couple of these here. Oops, go back. We have the ideal plate here, and we know what we're supposed to be eating. So meal prep, getting your fruits and vegetables, getting your parfaits, getting your whole grains prepared, brown rice, bagels, tortillas, all those things ready to go, and mapping out and having those things prepared ahead of time, because when they're available, student athletes will reach for them. Adults too, right? If we have our cut up fruits and vegetables, our string cheese, our yogurt parfaits in the fridge, we will reach for those things versus going to fast food or skipping a meal and relying upon a supplement. Okay, so getting that buy-in, relating to them, not just, hey, you need to eat your fruits and vegetables because they're good for you, but what happens if you don't eat those fruits and vegetables, which contain our key micronutrients, which are cofactors for macronutrient metabolism. You're going to have depression. You're going to have decreased bone mineral density, poor recovery, chronic pain. You're not going to adapt to all those amazing training adaptations that you just spent so much time developing, right? And then it decreases your sleep. Again, puberty, just growth, development, maturation. Once I tell any of my athletes, it doesn't matter how old they are, if I put a broken bone up on the screen when I'm doing a Zoom call with them, or a Band-Aid, and I show them this is what's going to happen, automatically they're like, I had no idea. And maybe they didn't like eating bananas or asparagus or whatever it is before. Now they're bought in. They're like, all right, I don't want to get injured. So they build these things. They keep the tank full, as I would say, because the more full we have a tank, right, the more we can take from it. So important to get sleep, obviously have sufficient hydration, and we're going to talk about that next. How important it is to wake up and drink water. Getting kids to put a water bottle by their bed, that has been such a game changer, because most of them don't drink any water for hours upon waking. And water is so important because it lubricates our joints and tissues. It helps with digestion, absorption. Water is so important. It's one of the most underutilized performance enhancements out there, and it's free. Speaking of water, we should all drink some water right now. Okay. And on the right there, I just have a picture of a very simple, again, we're talking with student athletes, right? They don't have immense cooking skills. So this is a very simple portable lunch that they can take with them, COVID friendly, because it's plastic baggies, there's cucumber slices or bell peppers, rich in antioxidants. The more color pigment something has, the more nutrients it's going to provide, which is going to decrease inflammation, support immune health. This RX bar here is fantastic because it has, dates, egg whites. It's a good whole food. An apple, Greek yogurt parfait. We have some almonds and some walnuts and pecans, pistachios. You can't see them, a whole nut mixture. So if you do, you get your kid to consume half this yogurt parfait in the morning and then half in the afternoon. I mean, that is a fantastic start, right? It's not about being perfect, but it is about progression and just starting somewhere. All right, hydration. So getting very clear on this, that, your urine, I mean, most people don't have access to specific urine gravity tests. You got to just look at your urine in the toilet to determine if you're hydrated. And we know that there is a significant impairment in performance when we lose about 1 to 2% of our body weight from dehydration. So that tends to be this more dark brown. So most people wake up pretty dehydrated in the morning. Here, hopefully not in this area, because that can be very problematic. So just determining hydration needs based on urine, that's one place to start. Plus, we also have to factor in electrolytes, how much were we sweating. But most times for, our athletes, the general population, we can use this urine chart as a really great place to start. And we know, right, like I said, hydrating as much as possible. For every pound lost, if we weigh in pre and post, whether it be training, practice, game, etc., we want to replace that with at least 24 ounces of fluid. So very, very important, because otherwise we have, reduction in speed, power, fatigue, our muscle strength goes down, we get headaches. I can't tell you how many hundreds of athletes I've worked with that they have chronic headaches. And once I get them drinking, an additional 30 ounces of fluid per day, they have no more headaches. Our goal is that minimum 80 to 90 ounces, as I say, but again, more activity, more body mass requires more water. So oftentimes that 90 to 120 ounces. So here's again some more recommendations for you. So before, during, after, as you can see, it can get pretty, I wouldn't say scientific, but for most people, they're like, I don't even drink 20 ounces within the first 3 hours of waking up. So again, student athletes, get them a water bottle. I have a hydro flask here because all my soccer girls love it. And it's a simple way that's 32 ounces that we can say, all right, if we consume about 3 of those minimum per day, we're getting, a pretty significant amount of fluid. It's much easier than trying to remember, all right, I have 3 to 8 ounces of water here, and then I do this there. Obviously, pre and post training, like I said, it'd be just rule of thumb. Let's just try and get in at least 8 to 12 ounces beforehand. And we can say, hey, if we're drinking this throughout the day, we know we're probably going to be pretty well hydrated going into our activity. This is some pretty specific. Like I said, most athletes are not drinking their regular amount of water. So if you tell them this on the left here, it's going to be kind of confusing to them, but it's a next step for them. But first step is let's get them drinking water so that we can, get them hydrated, and then let's start getting it dialed in. So taking it to the next level. Again, we're talking about sports nutrition 101 right now. If I had an elite cyclist, this is going to be very simple to them because they're so dialed in with their hydration. But again, student athletes, this is kind of confusing. It'd be better to just say, all right, we lose a pound of body weight. We've got to replace that with 24 ounces of fluid, but let's establish our hydration needs first. And we can also support our hydration levels by doing chocolate milk, any of these protein shakes. And some of these are not necessarily protein shakes because they are actually milk. So like, for example, this Sphere-like chocolate milk, this also contains electrolytes. It's one of the best ways to recover. I know that you follow me, so you've known me talking about how important chocolate milk is from a recovery standpoint, because it has that 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio, but it also offers electrolytes that we lose during our training and sweat. So I really love the Fairlife product lineup. They have the Core Power, they have the vanilla nutrition shake, again, significant amount of protein. You know, if I have an athlete that is trying to decrease, you know, their body mass, they're trying to lose fat and gain muscle, because they're a weight focused athlete, whether it be wrestling, this is actually really great because they're getting less carbohydrates from this, and they can actually eat it through fruit or whole grain, which is going to be more satisfying to them, so they don't end up binge eating later. So again, context is super key. And again, a recovery beverage, we want it to obviously offer some carbohydrates, but we don't want to necessarily drink those carbs always for most athletes, because we want them to physically have that satiety process take place where they're chewing. They allow the digestion process to take place too, a little bit. So just so you know, milk can be hydrating. So refueling during halftime, so hydration, we can support that still by doing, you know, maybe some sports drink. I'm not opposed to Gatorade. I think there's a time and place for it on the court. You can do an applesauce packet. You can do tart cherry juice. That is fantastic because it's been shown to decrease muscle soreness, help facilitate recovery because of the quick sugar absorption. Fruit, any type of fruit slices, fantastic. Blueberries, blackberries, watermelon's good, orange slices, strawberries. A lot of my hockey players will typically do watermelon slices in between. But basketball, I have a lot of basketball athletes and they really love doing the orange slices. So you just got to find what works well for your athletes and just give them options. Because a lot of times maybe they're a picky eater, which we work with a lot of those, but you just want to have a variety of choices available. And pretzel rods are great as well because they're carbs plus some salt. So that's really helpful too. So you don't want to overdo it with the halftime snack, but those are some great options. And then of course, electrolytes, I get a lot of questions about these. So I wanted to put this in here. I think that again, it just depends. I would never just make just mass assumption that everybody should use an electrolyte supplement, because a lot of athletes don't need them because they're already consuming enough salty snacks. They are well hydrated. They're at a time in their training where they're not expending a lot of, exertion minerals in high heat, depending upon where you're oriented. So this is often, if you're training outside, you're struggling to eat enough that day, I think that the electrolytes can be a great choice. A lot of athletes don't need them though. A lot think that they do, but a lot of student athletes, right, just need to get back to the basics. So I'm not against them again, but it's a great tool if it's needed. So for example, if we have a heavy sweater, and how you can determine this, if you actually need the electrolytes, is I do have some athletes that are heavy sweaters, the shirt. So if you have your shirt, ask your kids, do you have that salty, is the shirt saturated with salt and you have a lot of salt on your face? That's when an electrolyte would be appropriate. You're somebody that just sweats a lot and you're losing those key minerals. That would be, again, appropriate for this. But I always like to do whole foods first, just like with protein and other things. But we can talk more about that in the Q&A session here. So kind of wrapping this all together here as we get into the nutrient timing, eating every, 2 to 4 hours for a student athlete is absolutely paramount. The longer we go without having nutrition, the more our blood sugar levels tend to go on like a roller coaster. So that's why I have that here, is that thinking about getting your athletes in the habit of snacking every 2 to 3 hours as they're able. Because again, they're not just supporting their activity, they're supporting growth, development, maturation needs first. So for those that came in late, we talked about how it's important to eat for health first and then fueling for athletic performance second. Because what if your athlete gets injured? Now they're fighting off an injury they're recovering from an injury, and now they're, trying to maintain their body weight and also support their bone and muscle. How do we do that if we don't know how to actually eat healthy first, right? So the fruit, the vegetable, the lean protein, the appropriate portion of carbohydrate, that's really important fundamentally, because again, if they go fasting, they start skipping meals, their blood sugar is going to be on a roller coaster, and that's also going to affect their academic performance, their mood, depression. We don't want this. So that's why it's so important not to allow your athletes to fast or to skip meals. They need fuel. So let's talk about pre-workout. And I talk about this so much, but it never gets old, because a lot of people think that these pre-workouts are just the best thing under the sun. But unfortunately, right, we don't get our energy from food. We don't get our energy from pre-workouts or caffeine. We get our energy from food, as you learned, from macronutrients in the form of fats, carbohydrates, and protein. And these pre-workouts are problematic because they are in high dose caffeine, and it's recommended with the Academy of Pediatrics that student athletes consume no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine per day. It's adolescents, not just athletes. So a lot of these are significantly greater than the recommended amount from the Academy of Pediatrics. And again, we want them to be in the habit of eating food for energy and getting 9 hours of rest and drinking water and taking recovery days. All caffeine does is blunt the preserved fatigue process. It doesn't actually give you energy. It just blunts that fatigue. So that's why it's so important, again, to focus on eating the overnight oats, the egg and apple, or Greek yogurt parfait, or a smoothie. I have other options here too, a bagel with a little bit of jelly, depending upon the training. And I have, again, these, 4-2-1 strategies. On 4 hours out, we have a main meal. 2 hours out, you have a small snack. And then 1 hour out, you're sipping on things. So some of these, right, would be best consumed no less than 60 minutes before a workout. I have a lot of athletes that they can eat a banana and some peanut butter and they can go work out, but we really want to avoid doing that because we don't want to have solid food in the stomach. So I'm going to skip ahead real quick to this 4-2-1, and I'll go back to that other nutrient timing. So what I'm talking about, right, is that 4-2-1. And again, when executed, this is how you eat on game day too. There's no magic meals on game day. We don't try new foods on game day. We don't do anything special or different that we wouldn't have already practiced on a practice or training day. That is, again, one of those really underutilized rules of thumb that I promote so heavily, because I can't tell you, every single day I get a question from a coach or person, what should my athlete be eating on game day? Or they have a tournament coming up, what should they eat? And it's like, I can't answer that because I don't know anything about your athlete, but it's game day. You shouldn't be trying new foods. So I would pick the foods that are going to give them energy. If they can tolerate a whole grain chicken sandwich with, a side of fruit, that's fantastic. Or if you can do, some watermelon slices, a string cheese as snacks, it really just depends. But that's why it's so important that you practice what meals might work for you. And I have a ton of meal examples. But for example, for an athlete, they've practiced this. This is a great strategy to use. 4 hours out, you eat according to that plate, the fruit, the vegetable, the whole grain, right? And you have your fluid. That would be that grilled chicken sandwich option. And then obviously 2 hours we're nibbling, it's a smaller amount, right? Because we don't want to have too much food too close to our workout, to our game, to our training, whatever. 2 hours out, again, the Greek yogurt, berries, you could do string cheese and grapes. We really want to focus on a little bit of protein and carbohydrate. And then 1 hour out, it's sipping. So it's sports drink, the tart cherry juice. You could do an applesauce packet. The goal is that we just kind of top off. Remember how I talked about filling up that tank? Our goal is that since we've done that 4-2-1, our tank is full. So now we're just topping it off. And that 1 hour out is just going to, again, be some sips. Nothing full like the 4 hours out, because it's too much food. So people learn this the hard way. So that's why it's good to practice this protocol, the 4-2-1, on a practice day, so that you can get it down. And I have, an athlete that's like, all right, game day. I know that I'm going to have my, grilled chicken sandwich with my side salad, a little bit of avocado. 4 hours out with my chocolate milk. And then 2 hours out, I'm going to have, a little bit of oatmeal, some fruit, or a Greek yogurt parfait. And then 1 hour out, I know that I'm just going to sip on my tart cherry juice and I'm ready to rock and roll. Again, that looks different to every single athlete, and it really just depends on the sport. But this strategy, the 4-2-1, this has worked for so many people. And it's worked for my adult athletes too, because again, just getting your body primed and again, filling from that tank, the more full that tank is, the more we can take out of it, because when you're a young athlete, you go through this tank a lot faster than us as adults, right? They have increased nutrient needs. So again, these are additional options. So I always like to give people options. When we do the Q&A session, I can refer back to some of these slides. These are all on my Instagram though. And I talk about Greek yogurt, focusing on high quality protein yogurts. Greek yogurt has 2 times as much protein compared to your regular. So I do encourage you to go check those out, because these are really helpful, especially when you have your serving size. For example, the faje, that's a good option for 2 hours out to pair with a, just a handful of fruit, or an apple, a pear, a banana. Again, thinking protein and carb. So injury prevention, I want to stop for a second here and see if anyone has any questions. Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute and ask a question if you have a question.
I just want to double verify that we are getting the PowerPoint with the information.
So I'm going to share out the recording, but the PowerPoint,
Okay.
I will not share out. That's a part of an investment for doing, if I do a 60-minute presentation with the team. Yeah, so this PowerPoint it's beyond the $14.99, if you will, but I'm going to share the recording out with you.
Okay, that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the any of the slides, these again are all in my blogs. It's just the PowerPoint is organized in the sense of everything is here, but this is a presentation example. So if you're looking for a 60-minute talk with your athletes or a group, highly recommend this as an investment, because you would get the PowerPoint deck, like all the slides, and then obviously the recording, and you can share that out with whoever you want. So that's why I really encourage people to invest in the, presentation, because you can share all the slides with whoever you'd like within your school organization, and it's there as a resource forever. But most of these slides and this information is on my blog, it's in my website, all over my Instagram. So these resources are on my Twitter. So it's not like they're not there. It's just, I took the time to put all of them together. And it's a part of, one of the presentation services that I do offer.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so if anyone else has any other questions, I'll keep going through the eating for injury prevention. Does anyone else have any questions? Clear as mud. The 4-2-1 is the biggest emphasis, the nutrient timing. So I think, I think a lot of people are here also for the creatine though. So eating for injury prevention, this is important too. Just making sure, again, if you're eating according to the plate, the fruit, the vegetable, the lean protein, that is going to be beneficial for you from a longevity standpoint, right? And the healthier an athlete is, the greater ability they have to handle stress, tension, to adapt to their training. So I just emphasize, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids are found in our fatty fish, nuts and seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds. You can put those into smoothies. I have a ton of smoothie recipes on my website too, and Instagram. The vitamin D and calcium, that's found in, if we do 3 servings of dairy per day, whether it be string cheese, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt. Obviously, as you know, vitamin D is found in very trace amounts in our food, so a supplement might be necessary. I did do my master's on vitamin D and muscle cell receptor function, and 2/3 of the world's population was vitamin D deficient in 2016. I know that's much greater now. So that's where doing a supplement can be necessary, but I'm not here to tell anyone to take a supplement, like I said, but it is important to note that you do have greater needs as an athlete because of vitamin D's key role in muscle contraction, and every single cell in our body has a VDR receptor. So vitamin D is very important. So for example, again, something that's really amazing about, scheduling this, 60-minute presentation with your athletes is, getting access to some of this but this one's actually posted on my Twitter. I did share that. So this is a breakdown of what 5,000 calories would look like. So if you have an athlete that is trying to gain lean mass, this would be a great option. Again, it's nothing fancy, right? Back to the basics. But the problem is, again, most athletes, this isn't fancy to them. They're like, that means nothing to me. I'd rather do a bunch of protein powders and supplements. And if you go back to what I said, show your athletes a fractured humerus, tibia, something. if you don't eat enough whole foods, this is going to happen to you. And it's not to scare them, but it's to empower them that, hey, there's a reason why it's important for us to eat whole foods and that we can't rely upon supplements, because if we do, we're going to be suffering injuries, we're going to be sidelined, and you don't want to be sidelined, do you? And they're always going to say no. So just kind of putting it into, how can I get them that buy-in? Or if they want to be faster, or if they want to have, more free throws, show them, the example of a roller coaster, and how if you're not eating every 2 to 3 hours, you're not going to be as focused. And when your blood sugar is low, you have lower muscle contraction, lower concentration. So less baskets made, simply put, right? So just creating that buy-in, and part of this, right, is me empowering y'all to know how to talk to your young athletes. Most of the time, kids will not listen to their parents. Unfortunately, they need to hear it from someone else. So that's why it's so nice, again, to have that presentation. Someone else is telling them what to do. I'm a former college athlete. I'm still an athlete, and I have no skin in their game. So for them, they're like, well, yeah, I'll listen to a total stranger because she's not, telling me to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night, or trying to discipline me at home. So oftentimes they'll listen to someone else. So in addition, when we talk about, more foods, and these are just, again, simple, right? Peanut butter, jelly sandwiches, whole grain bagel, Greek yogurt parfaits, things that are just higher in calories. Oops, did I just close out my screen? Long day. Let me go back to this. So what I meant to do was show you the full screen here. So if you want to take a screenshot of this right now, absolutely do it. But it is on my Twitter. So if you guys ever go into the search toolbar in Twitter, or even just Google, you can actually do like Wendy Earlbeck, and then like carbohydrates or meal plan or calories, and you can find my tweet archive. That's often what I do when I retweet stuff. So I share stuff like this all the time. But this, again, is just going back to some of the meal prep with the plate, the fruit, the vegetable, the lean protein, the whole grain. And that's really what you want to do, is you don't want to memorize a meal plan. You want to build healthy habits. You want to have that education, that knowledge from that plate to be able to assemble your own meals. And that's what I do with my athletes and clients. I don't want them to rely on me forever. I want to teach them and empower them how to eat according to the recommendations, which is going to be that plate, the protein, the pre, post, all those things. All right, so back to the basics again, fueling at 2 a day, someone who's trying to gain lean mass, this is how you would eat. So again, you could assemble that meal plan based on what I have here. If you piece one item from each category, you have your plate. And here are some just quick tips for weight gain, because weight loss, weight gain should always try to be accomplished in the off season, because if you start to lower calories or raise calories too much, some athletes can become lethargic, and you don't want that. So it's best to do like off season weight gain. So for example, like right now I have a lot of football guys, a lot of basketball girls and guys. It's so fun. I have a lot of basketball gals that have been increased in their lean mass. One has just achieved putting on 10 pounds in her off season. She was also injured, so it's been a while for her, but we really want to try and focus on the body count goals outside of season. So that's really important. A lot of athletes are trying to gain weight during season, which is really hard to do, because oftentimes, right, they're not fueling sufficiently to achieve their basic fundamental needs. So if you're trying to, again, gain weight during season, it's really hard because you have to eat so much food, and that can affect your performance, obviously, right? Without even the 4-2-1 being factored in. So consistency is key. This slide is actually all over the place. It's on Twitter, Instagram, but I talk about the leucine, eggs, fish, beef, chicken, poultry. That's why when athletes tell me, I've been doing these mass gainers, I've been doing all the protein powders, but I just can't gain weight. It's like, well, how much real food are you eating? Because we don't even know with supplements. Yes, some are third-party tested, but not all supplements are regulated. So it can contain complete, sawdust. It can contain nothing of what it claims. So that's why whole foods, there is no replacement for them. So if we're eating those essential amino acids, the branched chain amino acids, rather rich in leucine, isoleucine, and valine, we're going to get our muscle protein synthesis achieved. So I had said, bare at the beginning, 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal. If you do the weight gain, right, we're thinking 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. So we want them to be eating frequently, plan ahead. Obviously, you want to really think about getting in maximum nutrient throughout the day, throughout the week, consistently. and eating something before bed, super important. That's the appropriate time to have some cereal for, weight gain athletes is, about an hour before bed with some cottage cheese, or they can do some milk. There's casein, there's a significant amount of protein. It's going to help, support their serotonin levels if they add a banana in there as well. So here are some quality calories, and I have the slide on my Twitter as well, also on my Instagram. A simple way you can easily gain lean mass by adding in these quality calories. So nuts and seeds, your whole grain oats, granola, grilled pita bread. You can do that. Spread some PB&J on there. You can make a banana peanut butter roll up. Super simple strategies to get in more calories. Just even having these, throughout the day, in between meals. So again, we're thinking weight gain here, but you can also use these for just general quality calories, because again, a lot of athletes are not eating enough food even at meals. So those peanut butter protein oat bites that I have, typically 2 of those would be equivalent to like 400 calories. That's a very easy way to get in more nutrition. So before using a supplement, this is super important. I always ask my athletes when we're doing our consult, when we're having our meetings together, what are you eating for breakfast? What are you eating for lunch? What are your goals? How much water have you been drinking? How much do you sleep? What are your training sessions like? How do you snack? Asking them those questions before we just throw a supplement in there. A supplement is meant to supplement the gaps. So it's really important that we have those main big sledgehammers accounted for, because a supplement cannot correct all those other deficiencies. It can help, but it's not going to treat the origin of their low energy. Maybe they're getting fatigued, maybe they're having constant stress fractures. It's really important to think about the supplement and the purpose of it before we, recommend it. Because a lot of times it's not going to help a lot of athletes. It'd be better if we got them to eat breakfast or go to bed earlier. So supplement safety 101, and this is also my Instagram, that we want to make sure it's third-party tested of, any banned substances. There's significant protocol that takes place when they are NSF Informed Choice Approved. You can actually download the app for free. It's an NSF app. You can download that on your phone. You can literally look up any supplement. If it's creatine, protein, again, I don't recommend pre-workouts. I would rather you eat a pre-workout food. But if an athlete's going to use that, at least I want them to be safe with it and make sure that it's third-party tested. So those are the sufficient protocols. So you can, again, look it up in the app. So creatine 101, I know that's what everybody's probably thinking in their minds, like, when is she going to talk about creatine? I get this question a lot. So creatine is not a steroid. We need creatine as human beings because it recycles ATP, which supports cognition, muscle contraction. Creatine is naturally found, in our animal proteins like meat, fish, and poultry. The problem is that most people who are training athletes, especially, are unable to meet their creatine needs through diet alone. So we want to increase our intramuscular creatine stores by consuming creatine monohydrate as a supplement. So in adults, we have so much research to support the benefits. It's safe, it's effective. So is that, thinking in terms of that supplement, is it safe for kids? I get that question a lot. It is. It's safe. It's effective. There's actually been significant research in the ISSN. They put out a position paper. Also, Dr. Andrew Jagum, Chad Kursiak, they put a summary together of creatine monohydrate tested in the adolescent population. There's been 0 reported adverse effects, 0. So if anyone ever says it's a steroid, it's not. It's 3 amino acids, arginine, glycine, methionine. It's naturally produced in our food, right? So it is not a steroid. It will not make you bald. It will not affect your growth. It will in fact help you because, again, it recycles ATP. So there's a good amount of research, again, to support the benefits of using creatine. It's safe, it's effective, it can decrease muscle soreness, it can help with recovery, it can decrease actually long-term effects from sleep deprivation in adults. That's been proven. So it'll be interesting when they start doing some good research with kids. But creatine is safe, it's effective, it works. And clean, with a K, that's a good product to use. You can also use Momentos, you can use NOW Sports. I have infographics on that, how you use creatine. And this is also my Instagram, is you want to use it post-workout, 3 to 5 grams, right? Post-workout, resistance training, and even on a rest day, you want to mix it in either a smoothie, your Greek yogurt, or whole grain oats. You want to pair it with a carbohydrate nonetheless, because it's insulin mediated, in which it requires a carbohydrate to be effectively absorbed into the cell. So I talk about that. Again, it's not confusing. We don't have to make it confusing if we just say, all right, the athlete, right, we're looking at whole foods first. They're taking good care of their sleep. That's when a creatine supplement is appropriate, because again, creatine is like the icing on a cake. Without the cake, it's really nothing. It does you no good, right, if you don't have the cake. So all those other healthy habits we talked about, that's the cake. Creatine is that icing that supports the cake. It enhances the flavor. It helps the longevity of that cake. So that's why I really recommend, obviously, whole foods first, hydration, sleep, and then factoring in creatine. But again, there's a lot of people out there that demonize it. So just know where you're getting that source of information. I have a blog on there. You can go read all about creatine. I spent 20 hours putting that blog together because I went through all the research. I combed through it with a fine-tooth comb, and there has been no reported adverse effects in youth athletes. So creatine is safe, it's effective, and is proven to work. And just again, to reiterate that, top nutrient deficiencies in teens. So creatine is a great supplement, but it can't account for the vitamin D, the calcium, the protein, the zinc, the iron that we get from our whole food. So if you want your athletes to really focus on the best things, get them eating whole foods, get them eating frequently, breakfast, lunch, dinner, balanced meals, hydrating, getting enough rest. Those are the most important things. I don't push my athletes to use creatine. That's like a step 12. I get them doing the fundamentals first, and then I introduce them to this supplement that can help them. But on the right there, that's always my main focus right off the bat, is let's get them eating sufficient nutrients. And then whey protein, there's basically the same thing, right? You want to make sure it's third-party tested. What are the ingredients? Are there carbohydrates in it? What's the cost? What's the taste preference? Is it, do you want to do the plant-based, or do you want to go animal-based? I would recommend doing whey, because whey has been proven to be the most effective for muscle protein synthesis. You can still achieve muscle protein synthesis via plant protein, pea protein, but it's just you'd have to consume 2 times as much because of leucine. Leucine is the number one driver for MPS. So if we don't have sufficient leucine in our pea protein like we do our whey protein, that can, create different effects. Chocolate milk, though, would be a fantastic choice instead of doing a whey protein. Sure, I use whey protein, my athletes use it, but again, first and foremost, whole foods first. Protein supplement is to fill the gaps. I mean, if they're training a bunch, they're not meeting their needs, but they're trying, that's where that supplement can be beneficial. And sleep, as you know, is incredibly important. In athletes that sleep less than 8 hours are 1.7 times more likely to be injured. This is also on my Instagram as well. And I talk about this because, right, sleep is just as important. I'm a dietitian, but sleep is king, and sleep is king, and nutrition is queen for performance. And that's really, the gist of nutrition in a nutshell is sleep, hydration, food, right, frequently throughout the day, preventing that roller coaster. These again are some of the most undervalued tips that a lot of people are under meeting, because again, how much we sleep affects our memory recall, our processing. If we don't get enough sleep, we're not able to clear out the plaque from the day before, and it affects our ability to retain more information, which affects our performance too. Because if you can't remember the play, you can't move, you can't get the drill down because you didn't sleep well. I mean, that's pretty important too. So I provide some tips there. Avoid electronics, make sure your bedding is comfortable, avoiding any type of lighting before bed, about an hour. Even they just proposed a study the other day about how just a little bit of sunlight or any sun exposure before bed can actually affect your sleep quality. So even getting a sleep mask might be beneficial to do as well. And doing, just a small snack before bed. Nothing too crazy, right? We can do some cottage cheese. We could do a little bit of yogurt, pairing that with some fruit, maybe just a little bit of, granola in there for additional magnesium that can help, slow down and lower our body temperature, relax our muscles. Really, really great information on this slide, which is also found on my Instagram. And again, cherries are fantastic for reducing muscle soreness. If you put some cherries, a little bit of strawberries, granola, and Greek yogurt or cottage cheese together, that's a great hour pre-snack, 60 minutes beforehand to consume. All right, so here are quick tips. This is also on my Instagram, but just, 2 breakfasts sometimes, right? That can be beneficial. Eating every couple of hours, we talked about that. Protein and carbohydrates should be consumed, within 45 to 60 minutes of training, and provide some options there too. But all this information is on my website. It's on my blog. It's in my Instagram, all there for you. I think the big key takeaways, right, are going to come from your guys' questions. So let's hear the questions. As we're going to go over a little bit in time. You guys are getting extra here. We had some people show up late, so lots of information. I know that's why you're going to get the recording. But what questions y'all have?
Okay, this may be a crazy question, and I don't mean to open a can of worms, so you can tell me if you will touch on this another time. But going into protein and protein supplements, a lot of protein drinks have and I may butcher this name, the carrageenan in it.
Carrageenan, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you see mixed things about that. Is it really safe? Is it bad?
Oh, carrageenan is fine. It's seaweed. It's a shelf stabilizer. So carrageenan is found in chocolate milk. I would not be concerned about seaweed, about carrageenan. I learned that in my food science class. So that is a very low risk item to have in your food products.
Okay. I was, looking at almond milk one day, and then I had read and it said colon issues and a possible carcinogen. And I thought, it's seaweed. How can it be that? So that's why I wanted to clarify that.
Right. To your point, though, I think it's April talking, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So almond milk, some of those plant-based alternatives, if you actually look at the ingredient list, it's going to be significantly longer than cow's milk, and you'd have to consume 8 times as much to get the same amount of protein in cow's milk. So 1 cup of almond milk provides like less than 1 gram of protein versus cow's milk is 8 grams. And then we're talking traditional, yeah. And again, it's not going to contain the same calcium, vitamin D. So I really discourage people from using plant-based alternatives unless it's Ripple or it's a fortified soy milk where it's going to have the 8 grams of protein.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. There's no crazy or silly questions. I'll have questions. And if I don't know, I will say I don't know, but I'll look into it for you. I don't know everything. Does anyone have questions about creatine? Know how to use it? Like this slide makes sense. If you put your 5 grams in post training, I always tell my athletes mix it into a smoothie so that it can blend up really well.
At what age do you start that?
It depends. It always depends. So, I mean, I have kids as young as 8 years old using it. There's been in the studies, the literature, there's actually 6-month-old babies. Again, it's amino acids. It's like the equivalent of, kids getting a supplement of amino acids as a child. So again, that's not the first thing that I talk about. When I sit down with like a 7-year-old, creatine is never our priority at all. It's one of those things where if I have a kid that's training at a high level, like I work with a 7-year-old hockey player, she's training a crazy amount of hours. I won't even say it's wild, but I've had her use creatine in her post-workout shake because she's doing everything flawlessly. And again, she's very young. And I know the benefits of creatine really outweigh the risks, which there's really no risks. So as a practitioner, I, provide that recommendation, and it's third-party tested. It's been safe, it's effective. Kids can use it. And it's a lot of doctors that are providing this misinformation out there. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting the science out there, because it can help kids, it can help older adults, it can help everybody. I can hear a question, but it's very faint.
Can you hear me? I switched devices.
It's very faint. Whoever's talking is, I think it's Cassie. Cassie?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
No. I'll try turning up my volume. Try again.
Can you hear me?
It's better.
Okay, I'll just try on here.
Oh, there we go. That's great.
Okay, so with creatine, I've had an athlete who was pretty faithful with using creatine, and for whatever reason decided to stop taking it, and then all of a sudden it's been like one thing after another, where it's like little nagging muscle things that are going on with him. Like, my quad hurts today. Oh, now my shoulder hurts today. He's a catcher, so. Sure. You say that you could find some correlation in abruptly stop taking creatine and injury?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't know specific studies actually that I'll look into it with some of my good friends in Canada who actually do a lot of the creatine research. I don't know a specific correlation that I've even read in the science with, stopping use and then all the muscle pains, the nagging injury. But what creatine does though, from a physiological standpoint is it helps us recycle ATP, which also helps with our muscle contraction, right? So there could be, it could be a number of things. I don't have enough information to really say, but I don't know why he would stop taking it because it can help regenerate muscle tissue. It can help preserve lean mass. I would recommend that he continue taking it, but I wouldn't likely link the muscle pain in some of the spasms that you're kind of talking about with not taking it. I would say it's likely due to probably an electrolyte imbalance, but I don't know. I don't have enough information. That's definitely a great Q&A. I have a Q&A session. So if you want to book a Q&A session, we can actually lay out and talk about the athlete and do like a case study, and we can really figure out what's going on. So it's likely something with sleep or a nutrient deficiency if he's getting kind of this muscle pain. It could be lack of vitamin D, protein.
Okay. And see, and that my recommendation, I was like, you should go get some blood work done. So.
Or blood work, yeah. If he can afford it, though, that's the thing. Like a lot of people, they get the blood work, but then they don't actually like do anything with it. So then they're out money. Right. It always just depends. Yeah. Most college athletes, in my experience, they don't have money to go get blood work done unless it's covered. So I always just say like, what's control or controllables, unless it's a big thing, of course. I don't know how severe it is, but if it's just one of those like kind of nagging pains, it could be a number of things.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question though. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
One more question, and I'm 99% sure I know the answer, but it's more so for my athletes, and I'm going to confirm with you. So I have athletes who are lactose intolerant. So supplement with the almond milk or silk milk or whatever else. You can still drink cow's milk that is lactose free.
Oh, absolutely. And Greek yogurt is lactose free too. Do you see on the side here? So we could actually do Fahe makes a lactose-free yogurt, and yogurt is naturally low in lactose. I see, and I have it in there. I have a lot of athletes that are actually lactose intolerant, but they tolerate yogurt just fine. Our hard aged cheeses are also very low in lactose, but Fairlife milk is lactose-free. I would not have them do the plant-based alternatives because they're missing out on all the great nutrients when the dairy products are lactose-free. There's a ton of products out there if they just flip the label. Good question. Couple of two Coulter's iPhones in here. Does that mean that he got kicked out and he has a question? Small group tonight so we can have this nice intimate time together. Does anyone have any questions about like protein intake or carbohydrate recovery? We'll wrap it up with one more question. How about this? I'll do you. Okay, if you guys do me a solid and you talk about what we talked about tonight, I will share the presentation deck with you so you'll have access to it. But you need to either go post on social media about what you learned about it, why you would recommend attending so we can get more people in here and having this great discussion that we're having.
I can definitely do that. I've really enjoyed this and look forward to the next month.
Oh, good. That's so exciting. Who is this? April?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I know it's a lot of content, and that's something that I'm kind of notorious for. Like, I want to give people so much that I know sometimes it's a lot. So technically we could break this down into, chunks and just focus on creatine and pre-workout and post-workout. And that's really my goal. So as you know, I work with a lot of people. So me giving up an hour, once a month really isn't a lot to do something like this at a low cost, because most of my presentations are anywhere from $600 to $800 per hour when I talk to universities or coaches. So that's my goal, is to create more awareness that, hey, I can still help you. I can still provide good content. If you can't afford, investing in the $800 presentation, we can still have this hour together every month and we can talk about a topic. And the more people that participate, the more we can learn together, because you guys encounter stuff in the field all the time. Like you just mentioned, Casey, with your athlete and the cramping and this pain with an injury. We could spend a whole hour talking about nutrition for recovering from injury. And I even have handouts on it. I mean, we get more people in here, there's more discussion. It creates a better opportunity for more problems to get solved, right? Because we all have things going on with our athletes, and we really create good education and knowledge when we kind of talk through them together. All right. Well, you guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm going to, like I said, I will share this presentation. I'll share the recording out. And you'll notice I'm actually tired from talking. I've been talking since 5 a.m. this morning. So if you catch any mumbling or blurbs, that is me being tired from talking all day. But you guys are awesome. I really appreciate your time tonight. And the next webinar will be May 2nd. It's a Monday. And I haven't decided on the specific topic. I am thinking meal prep because I have a ton of clients, a lot of people right now, even athletes, struggling with that meal prep. And I know I talked about, the no prep or the no bake meals. So a lot of people really like that stuff. So I was thinking that our next topic would likely be that going into summer. How can we prepare healthy meals that are nutrient dense for fueling busy athletes? There's so many tournaments, baseball, softball, track, camping. How do we stay on track? So I think that will be the next topic, but I haven't completely decided yet. But nonetheless, we will meet again Monday, May 2nd at 6 p.m. Central. Same process. It will be a Zoom, a presentation. It will be recorded, and then we'll share out the slides again. We'll make it a routine thing. So you guys have a blessed night, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.